So if we look at counseling issues then and now, well, back then in the 70s when I got started, and to sort of summarize what we were dealing with at that time, mainly personal problems, marital conflict, mental emotional symptoms, an occasional man that was addicted to porno, an occasional lady who was dealing with the aftermath of abortion. Of course, this was the hippie sexual revolution area, and drugs were rampant back at that time. But overall, the society was fairly stable. And I think we can say that the megachurch movement was starting about that time, and things were getting bigger and better in lots of ways. Now let's look at the instability of the society today, and just some of the things that have happened very, very briefly. Back when I started, we had, like I say, a man or two that find a dead stash of porno. So now and then you would find that. We all remember a Ted Bundy that grew up and his life was shaped and been out of shape because of pornography. That's where it all started with him, and he became a mass murderer. Now we have a whole generation that's grown up on porno, on HBO, the different things on television, and the internet porno. I've heard of a couple of studies, I don't know how valid they are, how large they were, that reported that half of evangelical pastors are into porno on the internet. Now, in this country. Now, I don't know, as I say, how broad those studies were, whether there's any validity. I know that some of them are because I've counseled with them. So a few years ago, I did a conference in Virginia for a seminar for a small counseling center, and invited the pastor of a fairly large Southern Baptist church to attend. He brought his associate with him, and had another pastor or two. It's a small group, and this pastor was a back problem. He had to get him walk around a little bit, but obviously he didn't know what we were talking about, but he seemed to be more or less open to it. Within a year or less after that, I forget, I know he had back surgery, I don't know if that's when it was, but anyway, he was away for 2 or 3 weeks from his office, and they had a problem with the computer system, and had a technician come in and fix the computer system, and found out he was wired into 3 porno sites. And here was a pastor that was a seminary graduate, also a graduate of Annapolis, hooked on porno. So it's a very common thing. Back, years ago, you had to go down to the sleazy part of town and buy porno and bring it home in a paper sack, or have it delivered through the mail in a plain wrapper. Well, today, all you have to do is flip a button, and you're into it. So anyway, you have that going, and a generation raised up on what back in the 70s would be called hard porn. It's on primetime TV now. Then you have situation ethics from back in the 60s and 70s. Situation ethics has been absorbed into society today. And the young people today think nothing of. In fact, if they're only sleeping with one person at a time, they think they're being faithful. They see nothing wrong with that. Rampant abortion. We've already killed more babies than the entire population of Australia. Probably approaching 15 million babies killed now. And the population of Australia is less than that. Maybe almost half of that. Then the homosexual agenda has permeated our society, even to considering gay marriage. The whole secular humanism thing has permeated our school system and permeated our government, and so the humanist manifesto is being fulfilled. Then you have that whole politically correct agenda. You're not supposed to say certain things. You've got to be politically correct. I haven't yet been accused of being politically correct, and I hope I never am. But a pastor preaching a message against homosexual sin could lose his tax-exempt status because now that's illegal. Hate speech. So we've seen the demise of morality throughout our country. And the vast corruption is going on within the marketplace and Enron and all these other places. So we've had the breakdown of society, and now we have a mandated tolerance. When somebody's going around with spiked hair and looking as weird as they act, you can't say anything about that. You've got to tolerate all these things. So you have a mandated tolerance. Now you've got all that breakdown going on. Then now enter radical Islam, which is intent on world domination. And that is their goal, and they're getting close to it. So we're having problems with that and terrorism all around the world, and this is just a push of Islam. And of course, we have the most vulnerable infrastructure in the world. Most powerful nation and the most vulnerable at the same time. And as long as they attack us from without, we can do great. But when they attack from within, we have no defense.
That's true.
Now, add to all that, we've had the psychologizing of the church. To me, in 2 Timothy chapter 3:5 says, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. And I think that describes all too many of our churches. Yes, there's happy exceptions to it. But the churches are primarily on evangelism, and they need to continue to do that. But the discipleship dimension is very, very lacking. And the discipleship programs that are going typically do not have the experienced cross at the core of the approach. So therefore, as all of this is taking place, the church is not being prepared for adversity and all the things that could come down the pike. And so the church is going on pretty much as usual. When we have radical Islam proving that they're willing to fight to the death. The suicide bombers, they have no thought for their own life. In fact, they're rewarded if they go through that. Well, when you have that and they're willing to fight to the death, it's only as the church is willing to fight from the death that we're going to have a church empowered to deal with Islam. But this message we're teaching, the message of the cross, is not in the forefront in the vast majority of churches. So if we look at just to get an overview of things and see what has happened, back in the beginning of the last century we had a thing called higher criticism. How do I say this so I don't offend my German friend? But the Germans, I think, were sort of in the lead on that higher criticism thing. And then Freud, another German speaker at least, I think he was Austrian, but Freud came along and began to do the same thing in the field of psychology, which has permeated and got it down to situation ethics and resulted, I believe, in the sexual revolution of the 60s. And then secular humanism came along to implement all that throughout the society. And then we have a government that's very much more liberal than we know about, because even the Supreme Court has to be appointed to the Supreme Court, they have to endorse murder to be a judge. Now, the judges are supposed to have fulfilled the law, and murder is supposed to be against the law, and yet Supreme Court judges have a litmus test of being pro-choice and murdering babies. I think we can see what a mess we're in.